It's International Women's Month and we are celebrating all women, even the notorious ones. Have you heard of the 40 Elephants? In the late 19th century, they were London's all-female crime organisation, the best shoplifters in London, hiding multiple fur coats in their skirts and their bloomers. Their queen, Diamond Annie, ruled with an iron fist from the 1910s to the 1920s with ruthless precision. She could swipe an entire store's merchandise in under 1 hour. Women are certainly daring and different, and of course we are positive too. Welcome to Kaleidoscope. Coming up, women in migration, women in tourism, and women in cinnamon. Did you know that Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn? Don't forget to subscribe, follow and like us for more. A massive thank you to our wonderful partners on the show for their support. Amari Colombo, Srilanka Live, CDB and The Daily Morning. You're simply awesome.
She wins with CDB Wings, exclusive financial solutions for women.
Looking back at the week that was on CDB Snapshot, Sri Lanka's worker remittances in the first 2 months of 2025 soared to $1.2 billion. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka makes a net purchase of $70.3 million from the domestic forex market in February. The IFC partners the Colombo Stock Exchange to ring the opening bell on Women's Day, accelerating action in women's business leadership. Sri Lankan Airlines marks a milestone on International Women's Day, flying with an all-female crew to Bangkok as well as to Melbourne. Sri Lanka has one of the lowest terrorist threats in the world according to the Global Terrorism Index. The world's top 20 most polluted cities have been named, and 19 of them are in Asia, with 13 of them in India. Fashion designer Rodrigo shows off a cello-shaped dress at Paris Fashion Week.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
Welcome to Srilanka Life News Capsule. Given that it's International Women's Month, Amari Colombo is collaborating with us to delve into some deep industry conversations focusing on catalysts of change. Did you know that while women are a big part of the global hospitality workforce, only 10% of Sri Lanka's formal hospitality workforce are female? To discuss this today, we feature one of the panelists on the 17th of March in the session Dining for Change at Amari Colombo, Nayantara Fonseca, better known as Taru, who was the founder of the original Taru Villas and is now the founder chairperson of 9 hotels, for a deeper perspective of women in tourism. Looking at your business model, you have more males than females in your entities. Why?
You will find that when you go to my properties, but you won't find it in my office. I think we are predominantly female in office. And the driving force behind my product, are women actually. And but on the properties, it's very difficult to have women amongst men. I mean, I find it particularly in the South, it's really very difficult. But because our boys are not very well behaved sometimes around the girls, and even if they're married or not. So it becomes a bit of an issue, it becomes a huge issue. And most often I have removed staff girls, women who have been working there, and moved them to other jobs close by in bigger hotels. So in smaller villas it's very difficult to manage this because it's a small team. And really I had to talk about Chandra Wickramasinghe, Mr. and Mrs. Chandra Wickramasinghe, who have done this amazing job of having Ambayaluo in the Ambulla. I spoke to him the other day and he said, it's not that easy. It's not easy, but he's doing a wonderful job. And so if I can do something like that, I'm going to give it a shot.
So there's a concerted effort to have more females in the industry. Given your experience now, is this practical?
It's a necessity, really, more than it being practical. Practicality is something we have to work around. But to encourage them to be a part of it. I mean, we use women, we use women sometimes in the laundry or I've had so many front office people and never been really truly successful in having them stay happy. Happy is the thing. Or they have, to me, I feel that I have to put a little bit of energy into hiring more women. So I've got 3 new properties coming up, and I've told my GM yesterday, and I said, I want women.
Given our cultural and traditional norms, what are the problems associated with getting more women into the industry?
Family pressures are tremendous for them, so we have to kind of fit them into this whole, and it doesn't work sometimes. I mean, somebody may have to stay beyond 6 o'clock in the evening, and then that becomes an issue. Then we have husbands coming in and screaming at the gates, where our wives, we have had that. So, but also providing them, kind of safety nets of transport, and it's very, very difficult, Savithri. It's really difficult, but we are going to try. I am going to try. I'm going to make a difference. Take Chandra's module and see if we can work around that one. South is very difficult.
Given all this that you've experienced, in what areas do you think women would fare the best in the hospitality industry?
I would like to see more people in service, more girls in service, right? But again, they get shunned aside a little bit because the men tend to take over, because it's hospitality has been a male-dominated industry for so long that it's pretty alien to Sri Lanka. But I would like to have some GMs. I feel guest relations, housekeeping, they're fabulous at housekeeping, right? Because they go into the detail, as opposed to men, they will kind of sweep over it. But so, and then also I would like them to be involved in operations.
Catalysts of Change, a Women's Week initiative by Amari Colombo and Kaleidoscope with Savithri Rodrigo. Join thought leaders, trailblazers, and pioneers as we celebrate catalysts of change and accelerate action. 2 weeks, bold conversations, real impact. Be part of the movement.
And now let's take a look at the markets this week. At the Colombo Stock Exchange, there was little interest, with average daily turnover levels dropping and the all share price index continuing to weaken. Oil prices settled in between 66 and 67 US dollars per barrel, close to one-year lows, as the US dollar weakened amid fears of an economic downturn. The weaker US dollar led to most investors turning to gold as a safe haven and keeping prices close to all-time highs at 2,900 US dollars per ounce. These Indian bodybuilders are changing the norm. Muscular women are taking on feminine forms and altering the way a woman should look. Today, as part of Kaleidoscope's collaboration with Amari Colombo, highlighting women as catalysts of change, we tackle the subject of women in migration. As of 2020, women constitute approximately 48.1% of the global migrant population. In Sri Lanka, labour migration remains a critical economic pillar, with 298,000 citizens departing for foreign employment in 2023, averaging 25,000 departures monthly. So, celebrating International Women's Month, we have in our studio today Research Fellow and Head of Migration and Urbanization Policy Research at the Institute of Policy Studies, Dr. Bilesha Weeraratne. In what ways does the feminization of migration actually impact societies and economies of both the origin and destination countries? If you look at Sri Lanka, for instance.
If we look at Sri Lanka, we see that feminization migration has given many opportunities, economic opportunities. So if we break it down into low-skilled and high-skilled workers, for low-skilled women, these are the women who would not traditionally come into the labor market, and they didn't have opportunities, or they didn't want to take up the opportunities available in the country. So now with migration, they have gotten a chance to come into the labor market and be employed, especially low-skilled workers like female domestic workers or care sector workers. So now they have a chance to be employed and earn an income. And then similarly, if we look at high skilled workers, they would have had opportunities in Sri Lanka, but not as much as opportunities that is given with migration. And with migration, what happens is now they have more returns to their education, more returns to their skills, meaning higher wages. So they have more options to look at. In addition to the economic opportunities, migration or feminization of migration has also brought in a lot of remittances to Sri Lanka, because a big part of Sri Lanka's migrant workers are female migrant workers, like 40% account for female workers, and their remittances have made a huge contribution to the Sri Lankan economy.
So how does Sri Lanka's heavy reliance on female migrant workers, especially in domestic and caregiving roles, shape gender dynamics within Sri Lanka?
The traditional roles in the family has been changed now. When the migrant mother would go overseas, the alternative people in the household, the father or the grandparents, would take a greater care role, and that would have an impact on the children as well as the family left behind in this alternative care role. And then when we look at females who are migrating, some females experience vulnerabilities at certain times. When we look at the countries of destination, now with feminization of migration, there has been a supply of female workers mainly in the care sector. So now there is a market for care workers. There is a demand as well as a supply. So that has changed some dynamics in the countries of destination. Ideally, this would free up the time for the women in the countries of destination. But because mostly Sri Lankan women go to the Middle East, this freed up time is not used by the women in the Middle East countries to take up foreign employment opportunities, but they have more time to themselves because the care role is given to the migrant workers often.
So skilled migration among women is increasing. Now, does that signal a brain drain?
When we look at female departures, out of the total departures, when we have about 40% departures, it is reasonable to assume that in the high skilled groups also there is a lot of migrants going, and that would contribute to brain drain. But how do we minimize it? It's important to have connections with them so that we don't lose them forever once they go. So one thing to do is give them opportunities to remit in a meaningful way that matters to them. And the other thing is get their knowledge exchanges back to the country. But one important thing is, most often when brain drain takes place, they're not going to come back. So we have to understand that when there is no return migration happening, there is limited scope that we can extract or get the benefit of the migrant having learned experience or gained experience or learned new skills. So in that way, it is very important to have strategically stay connected with the skilled migrants, so that brain drain is not only brain drain, but we also have some brain gain involved in their departure.
Your Ceylon cinnamon comes from the hands of a collective of women who literally know their cinnamon. We were at Vatavala plantations recently at Homadala estate in Udugama and watched fascinated as these women debarked, dried, rolled and put together the only true and pure cinnamon in the world. In fact, 90% of the production of this true cinnamon originates from Sri Lanka. Remember, cinnamon was at the epicenter of trade from the times of ancient Ceylon and foreign rule. The Cinnamon Processing Centre is a small yet highly productive centre manned by 24, of which 75% are female, supervised by Senior Assistant Factory Officer Deepani, who herself showed us the rolling of the cinnamon. The peelers, all women, have a knack for turning out the best cinnamon. They are qualified with an NVQ Level 3 cinnamon peeling certification and have dignity of labour with a good work-life balance, given they are all from the area. One other thing, despite cinnamon processing being a seasonal job, the centre provides employment to these women right throughout the year. So next time you hold a stick of cinnamon in your hand, remember these sticks emerge from the hard-worked hands of women who pride themselves on giving you the best cinnamon in the world. Join us next week for more positive, daring, different women. See you next week.